Welcome to Yeshiva Daf. We're holding in Zevachim Daf Tetzayin. We're going to be starting again from the beginning of the parak. And the beginning of the parak gives us a rule regarding the dinim of karbanis. Says the Mishnah, Kol Zevachim shekiblu damon. If the blood was accepted by a zar, someone who's not a kohen, a oinen, a kohen who had someone die in his family that day. Tul yoim, someone went to the mikvah, but he did not wait for the evening. Mechusar Kippurim, he did wait for the evening, but he still didn't bring his carbon. In the case, he has to bring a carbon. Umichusar b'gadim, he's not wearing the big dikuna. Shalarochatz yadayim raglayim, or he did not wash his hands and legs. Orel, a kohen who did not have a bris milah. Tomei, kohen who's tomei. Tais already asked, so why does it tell me tomei? If you have tvul yoim, so of course you have Tameh. So he says, because you're learning from the Psukim, and we want to put Tameh together with Arvel. Yoshev, if he's sitting down, you have to be standing and do the Avodah. Oimed al gabei kelim al gabei behemo. Has to be standing on top of, if he's standing on top of kelim, or on top of behemo, he has to be not be standing above the feet of his friend. Plus, all this is the place of the Avodah. Kiva b'small, accepted it in the left hand. Plus, it's also possible. Shimon says that's not going to be paisel in the left hand. Just an interesting point that we say the Torah in Hilchos Tefillah learns from this Mishnah a lot of halachas regarding Tefillah. The Bach points out that he's learning it from this Mishnah and many different things about standing straight and standing in a certain way. One of the things he brings is standing one next to each other. Says where's the marker for that? Says the Bach, it's also ambitious because ambitious says you should not be stepping in something else. So that means you don't have one foot on something and the other foot on something else. Both feet are standing straight. Now the Gemara is going to go and learn each one of the list of the Mishnah, the source. And we're going to have here, it's similar, maybe early in the Masechta, but here it's things that we know. It's not a new concept. It's all, things we can relate to. And there'll be obviously some repetition, some things like that we will go back and forth as we learn the different limudim. So we had to start already yesterday just to go through it again. Tani Levi brought a pasuk. Daber el Aaron velbono v'yinozru mikochim Yisrael speaks about that Aaron, that the Kohanim should be careful. We started the parak again. They'll be careful to not become Tameh or Ba'amum when they do the avodah. It says over there he knows when he comes to Yisrael. So the more darshan b'nei Yisrael l'muti bai. Ilim l'muti noshim want to come to exclude woman. Korban noshim etuma karv. Can you bring korban noshim etuma? So why not? Maybe you could. Maybe that's the point. So the sound what it says in Rashi is, how can you make a kohen tameh? A kohen is not allowed to be tameh. So suddenly for korban noshim is allowed to become tameh. Elu muti of the kachavim l'mai coming to take a goy. Tell me that a goy can be karv etuma. Says the more hashtet tzitz to miratze. What is tzitz miratze? Don't amar v'tikachovim mishegim amazing lo yirutzu. What does it mean? When a person goes and puts a carbon on the mizbeach, the tuma, so the tzitz, which is on the forehead of the kohen gadol, is miratze. So even though you're not allowed to bring a carbon tumo, if you did bring a tumo and it went on the mizbeach, so then it's miratze. But go, you don't have that. So not only that he doesn't have that. It's even worse than Yisrael. Yisrael, you can't bring a betumo, still you have to miratze. Go, even that you don't have. So you can't be that you can bring a betumo. Right? It says more betumo karif. El achikol he knows me kodshe. Bnei Yisrael v'leichalu. As I saw yesterday, you read the pasuk Bnei Yisrael v'leichalu. If Bnei Yisrael do the avodah, they will be mechalel. For me, you learn the Bnei Yisrael can't do. That is source number one. That's how Levi learns. The Rabbi Shmuel Tano asked the Kavachim. He says, no, you don't live in this pasuk. Remember this pasuk, the pasuk of Ve'inozru. We'll get back to the pasuk in a moment. Brother, he learns a kavachimer. What's a kavachimer? Mi ba'amum. Ma ba'amum she'oichel im ovat chilel. We know ba'amum, kohen, who has a blemish. If he does the avodah, can he eat from the meat? The answer is yes, he can eat from the meat. Ba'amum is allowed to eat, even though he's not allowed to do the avodah. But when you split the meat, he gets a piece. But if he did avodah as mechalel, when you have Zevachim with the on top, Zar she'eino ichel, a zar, non-kohen, he doesn't eat from the meat. Eino din she'im avad chilas, of course he did avodos mechalal. Mal ba'amun she'ken also b'korv k'makriv. Ba'amum, chiluk is that there's the korv and makriv are the same, meaning the kohen and the animal. Mum is a problem by the kohen, mum is a problem by the animal as well. So a saboy korv k'makriv. Masha'inke by a zar, there's no such thing as an animal zar. Tome yuchiach, what about Tome? Tome, you don't have behemoth like an otam. Rashi explains, a behemoth does not become Tome when it's alive. So there's no such thing as an animal Tome. Ma Tome shekeme Tame. Tome, you know what they mean by Tome? Tome spreads tumor. It's like they have like a disease. It goes on. Masha'inke and a zar doesn't spread. Ba'amum yuchiach, so ba'amum doesn't spread. What makes the chumrah, makes the speciality by ba'amum, which is the fact that also korv kemakriv is not a speciality, is not the unique thing by a tome. The unique thing by a tome is not the unique thing by ba'amum. They have a azor, they have a warning. And if they did a avoida, the mechal da avoida. Right? So the same thing zar, you have a warning. If you have a warning, you should know that it's mechal da avoida. So there's two parts there. One part is the warning. Torah says don't do it. We're on the sues right now that we do have a warning. The second thing is that I'm trying to learn from here the idea of atchila, that I ruined the avoida. Says the Gemara, but where's the azara? If it's the same pasuk that we mentioned in the previous Amud, why have to tell me that you do chilul because kavachomer? The chilul says chilul in the pasuk. Elamai doesn't agree to that pasuk. There it says zar lo yikrav, zar should I get close? It doesn't say that what happens, it does get close. You can ask her that, but that's not mutar b'bama. Meaning, by a bama, you cannot have a ba'amum. And by a bama, you cannot have a tome. But you could have a zar. You could have a zar. A zar is a makiv. And a bama, Rashi says, not bama g'dul, bama k'tana. Bama is a bama that you have in each one's backyard. You can, a zar can be makiv in a bama. Before the building of Mikdash, in the private mizbeach, an individual could do a krab. So if so that's different than what you have by ba'amum and Tomei. Say, well, it's not Tomei yochiach, ela ema oinin yochiach. Instead of using Tomei, let's use an oinin. What's an oinin? Similar to a Tomei. But an oinin is someone who has a death in his family, even though he didn't have a Tomei to them, he still also to do the avoid if he's a regular kohen. Ma'al oinin, she can also be meiser. An oinin cannot eat meiser. Special din, that an oinin is not allowed to eat meisers. He's allowed to eat other things, he's not allowed to eat meisers. Ba'amum yuchiach, bring around ba'amum. The ba'amum is allowed to eat meiser. The chazar adin, lo yizeh ki yizeh, again the same concept, we tried to find the common denominator between the two. Tzah shol shuven shu muzarim, same thing. So you learn instead of learning from Tameh, you're learning from oinin. So ma'achram nifrach l'natzah shovim sheken lo yitu b'bama. You didn't help me. The more says you're not allowed ba'bama the same thing. How do you know? We asked you a question. Said it's something which also b'bama, meaning Tomei and ba'amum. One says say oinin. Oinin is also b'bama. Says the Gemara, matkala sama b'rida avovo man leiman l'dorin also b'bama. The mishar b'bama. Who said? We don't have a source that oinin is also b'bama. Maybe also b'bama, and maybe oinin is mutar b'bama. And he may learn. Because the Rashi brings the pasuk says min hamigdash lo yetze. From there you learn. So we'll see about Kohen Gadol. So what was happening that was? Oh, so I was sitting today. I was learning with Mechavus, and I had next to me a very big Zevachim. And I asked him, "Is an oinen mutar b'bama also?" Because we started the sugi, we didn't know. So like, what is the Gemara saying? And he said, "I think it's a Gemara somewhere." Blah 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 blah. And they said, "Yeah, the Gemara itself is discussing it." What does that mean? Good question. So the Gemara b'shasha amar also kavachomer mi Yoshev. You learn oinen from Yoshev. Sorry, Zar from Yoshev. Ma Yoshev Shoichel Imod Chilel. If someone's sitting, right, he's allowed to eat. Yeah, a kohen is allowed to sit down and eat. But if he did avodah, is mechulal. Yoshev is mechal avodah. Zar she'ein oichel. Einu din shiva Imod Chilel. Very simple kavachemer. But instead of learning from Baalamum, you're learning from a Yoshev. Mali Yoshev kaposul leidus. No, I'll tell you the difference. You can't give a testimony sitting down. Now we learn from the Gemara in Sanhedrin. You have to be standing. So the Gemara, you could sit down. So yeah, but there's Shem Yoshev. You're right. There are cases where someone sitting down is kosher leidus. Tamechochem is allowed to say edus sitting down. But some people cannot sit down and do the edus.
Why not?
Because every other person is a din. So I do with Tamechochem. Says the Gemara, Shem Yoshev leporch. In fact, I'm not asking Shem Yoshev, there's such a thing. The Gemara say, Yoshev is kosher leidus. If you do want to ask for Yoshev, ask him Yoshev u'michad manach. You do a common denominator, tzad hashave, between Yoshev and chad manach. Rashi says chad manach is either oinen, tomeh, or ba'almum. Tzad hashave between them. And that's what it is. So Yoshev the kosher b'bom minalan. I didn't here. You don't ask about bama. Why? Because we want to answer the question. Say this is kosher b'bama. How do you know you can sit by a bama? Omar kol na mori lifnei Hashem l'sharsu lifnei Hashem v'lo lifnei bama. Only lifnei Hashem you stand, not lifnei bama. You're allowed to sit by a bama. Now here we have a fascinating Taisus with the same Taisus of Sanhedrin. Taisus asked, we know the story about Agrippa Samelech that came to Beis Hamikdash and he wanted to sit. Sorry, not Agrippa, Yana Melech came to Beis Hamikdash and he did not let him to sit in Beis Hamikdash. Did not let him. Did not let him to sit in Beis Hamikdash. Another story. Did not let him to sit for Eidos. So asks Taisus if it's a Bechachim, you say you can sit down. Kol Shekera Melech. Because Melech Shemocha Kvoido in Kvoido Mochel, he can't give up on his covet. Mashek Tevachol Shemocha Kvoido Mochel, seemingly Tevachol is less than a Melech. So if Tevachol can sit down to do Eidus, why can't a king sit down to do Eidus? Zok Taises, no, it's the exact opposite of what you think. Tevachol Shemocha Kvoido Mochel, you know why? Because Torah also delay, because he owns the covet Torah, so he can decide when to give it up. But a king, it's not his covet. What is the covet Malchus? Malchus Hashem. So his covet is the covet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That covet is something he can't give up. Okay? We also said the Mishnah now will be an Oinim Minola. We mentioned before, as something we know from the Mishnah, but what's the source? This is like Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, when he's an Oinim, he doesn't leave the Beis Hamikdash. He still won't cause Chilul. So regular Kohen, they left the Beis Hamikdash, that is Oinen. If he didn't leave the Beis Hamikdash, Chilul causes Chilul. This is a pasuk. He brings a different pasuk. Heni krivu ani crafty. It says by this in the beginning in the Yom Shmini L'Miluim. It says the Moshe Rabbeinu went into the Beis Hamikdash and he saw that they burned the carbon and he was upset. We're going to see later in the Masechta. We're going to see a machlekes, what exactly, what Moshe would think they did, and what actually happened. And the Gemara is going to address it a little bit in this daf, more detail later. But the Gemara now brings up this sheet holds. You know what they did? They were oining. Why? Because Nadav and Avihu died. The two brothers that was that day, they were burned. They were died. So they're oining. So he says, Moshe would have came with a taina to Aaron. He says, well, what exactly happened over here? Did they makriv the carbon? So Aaron says, no, I need crafty. I was makriv the carbon. If they were makriv, so then yes. Then it's correct they have to burn the carbon. Why doesn't he learn from the pasuk? It says that Kohen Gadol it could stay. It said Diuk. It comes to tell you the opposite, as we say over here. It's going to tell you the out there Kohen Gadol is what maybe they both could do it. But I think Kohen Gadol is more common because he's more Kaddish. So even Kohen Gadol not. Who's the Kohen Gadol is different? Why didn't he learn from the conversation of Moshe to Aaron? He held, do you know why he got burned? Not because of Oninus. because he got Tommy. That's the Machlekes like, come on, what exactly happened to Yom and Meluim? Is it because they were Oinen or because they were Tommy? So he says the pshat over there is not because of Oinen, and you can't bring it right to Oinen. So you know Oinen, you live from Ba'amum. Uma, that's the time of base. Uma Ba'amum Shoichel, Ba'amum can eat, as we said beginning of the previous daf. Imovad Chilel, if he did not avoid it, he was Mechalet. Oinen Shein Oichel. Oinen did Shein Imovad Chilel. Oinen cannot eat. Now even a Kohen Gadol who's an Oinen cannot eat, even though he can do an avoid. So of course, Imovad Chilel. Ma Ba'amum, she can also be craving, similar to what we said before in Amud Aleph regarding Azar. By Tomei, so Ba'amum, the animals and the people have the same issue. Mashayin can buy Oinen. Zar Yechiach. Going from Zar. Now we know Zar. So now we tell you with Zar, you don't have a Zar by an animal. Zar can't fix it. Ba'amum Yechiach. Ba'amum also can't fix it. Again, I can't have to find the common denominator. What is it? They have a Zara and they cause the Chilu. Also by Oinin, you have a Zara, so it was Mechal. Heichen Muzar, very similar to what we said in the previous song regarding the Zar. Where is the Zara? You want to tell me he agrees with the drasha, the first drasha we mentioned, it says Chilu there. I don't need a Kavachim. Hello, Mani Krivu. Back to Aninus. In other words, going back to the Pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu married, it was because of Aninus. And that was and there it says, because it was Oinen, it got burned. So you see over here that Oinen ruins it. Ikel Mifrach. So, okay, you want to learn now. So we have Azar and one was Kavachim from Ba'amum and from Zar. So they want to show yeah, but Ba'amum, you never mutter. There's no such thing. Azar is never mutter. Mashe'en ken Oinen, there is a case that you mutter. What's the case? A Kohen Gadol. Second one, Tomei Yochiach. Tomei is sometimes mutter. Tumo hutra be Sibur. Ma Tomei shekem etame. Yeah, but Tomei can't learn from it because Tomei spreads tumo, like a disease. Hanach Yechivu. So let's go back to Oinen and Ba'amum. And Zar. Hanach Yechivu. Chozoradin. Sorry, Ba'amum and Zar. Ma'atzal Shem Shemuzayim. We have a new tzah shavim all three. So yeah, all this is never mutter by a korban yochid. The only case that you have two mahutra is be sibur, but a korban yochid you don't have too much with sibur. So I don't have oinin is never sorry, Ba'amum is never mutter, Zar is never mutter, and even tumo is not mutter by korban yochid, and masheik and oinin is mutter by korban yochid. Says the Gemara, Shem Tuma Miya Ishtari. Yeah, I'm not talking about. You're right. There is Tuma. Tuma is not always also. Yes, not by Korban Yochid, only by Korban Tzibur, but we find that Tuma not always will apply. So merely it's similar to an onion, which doesn't always apply. You know, I know onion. You learn from Yeshiva, similar to what we said before. He's allowed to eat. Onion can't eat. Of course, is Mechal Davino. Mali Yechezkel Pasul Eidos. Okay? But, Oinen is Pasul Eidos, Yechezkel Pasul Eidos, saw before. Mi Yechezkel Chacham. Chacham is not Pasul Eidos when he sits down. Mali Shem Yechezkel Pasul Eidos. What about Shem Yechezkel? Shem Yechezkel means that you find a case that a Yechezkel is Pasul Eidos. Shem Yechezkel, the part still what we said before. Yeah, the fact that you find a case is not good enough to do a pirul. So you know, maybe you can learn from Yeshiva directly because that's Pasul Eidus. So I bring a raya from Yeshiva and one of the other ones, Tameh or Ba'amum, and that's how I get to Oinin. So different limudim, how do I know that Oinin is Pasul? Says the more Oinin Pasul. Says the more now. Now, we learned a few rules, and now what the one's going to do here is it comes up similar flow of the Gemara. And several places in Shas. The place in the bottom brings us a few. Chulin, it's 2 places in Chulin, and then you have a place in Menachis, and a place in Bava Metzia, and Bava Kamo, in Kiddushin, and Nazir, and Yavamas, what is going to try to say now? We know a few rules. We know that an oinin is mutter by a kohen gadol in his own korban, not the korban tzibur. We don't know that. We know that a tumah is mutter b'tzibur. We know that. So we know some clothing. The ones that say now, why don't I look kavachemer? Once you find in one place, let's look at the other place. And the one's going to try to do it for 4 different angles. Can I do it from here to here, or from there to here? Every one angle, I'll try to do kavachemer. So let's see. So the Gemara starts over Rovo. Leishana lekorban yachid. A oinin is possible. A kayin oinin is possible only in a korban yachid. Hav korban tzibur miratze. Should be a korban tzibur to be an oinin, a regular kohen. Why? Kavachemer tumah. Ma tumo shelo yuchu bichlal. It's a kohen gadol v'korban yachid. Tumo, you can't do betumo by individual korban. Even a kohen gadol can't do it. Who trades a ledjoy v'korban tzibur? But by korban tzibur, I do allow even kohen hedjoy to do betumo. Aninu shuchu bichlal. It's a kohen gadol v'korban yachid. Oinin, the kohen gadol can do v'korban yachid. Ain't a did sure that's a kohen hedjoy v'korban tzibur. So I'll give you a kavachemer. If I do find that by that oinin, that tumo huchu b'tzibur, so kosh aninus, because tumo lo huchu b'yachid, but aninus does. So b'tzibur kosh should be that way. Say one second. If so, let me go for the other direction. Matkaver by loy tuta aninus is a kohen gadol b'korban yachid. That itself, you should be oiser and a kohen gadol oinim korban yachid. Why? Kavachemer. Umat tumo shu it's a kohen hedjud b'tzibur. Tuma was huchu b'tzibur. Loy it's a kohen gadol b'korban yachid. In this thing that Rav is trying to learn, says right now we don't know this, so we're assuming that tuma lo huchu b'korban yachid. Aninus shelo huchu it's a kohen gadol b'korban tzibur. Aninus that you don't have by a hedjud. And shelo tuta it's a kohen gadol b'korban yachid. So that itself, that you tell me that kohen gadol is mutar only because that's the mashmos apostle. Why do you have a kavachim against it? Question number 1. Another question. That itself that you assume that there's no tuma hutra only b'tzibur. Why not? Say kavachemer. Uma aninus shelo hutra it's a kohen hedjud b'korban tzibur. Aninus that you don't have a kohen hedjud. Hutra it's a kohen gadol b'korban yachid. A kohen gadol could do aninus. Tuma shutra it's a kohen hedjud b'korban tzibur. You do have tuma hutra b'tzibur, and shutra it's a kohen gadol b'korban yachid. Kavachemer from that angle, and the more now goes to a 4th angle. To the too much with that itself that you say too much b'tzibur. Who said? We have a kavachemer. Umani shoot it's a kohen gadol korban yachid. Lord says the kohen hedjod korban tzibur. Aninus works by a own kohen gadol kohen hedjod. Too much lo it's a kohen gadol korban yachid. Ain't did show to tell kohen hedjod korban tzibur. So in other words, every angle I go, I have a question. If it works here, so why should it not work here? If it doesn't work here, it should not work here. Should do kavachemer for every angle.
So the anything about a kohen gadol, but aninus by korban tzibur. So it's a kohen gadol by. Hartman doesn't try to prove.
No, you want to see if the kohen hedjud could do kosher kohen gadol. I don't. The first attempt.
The word tries to prove it for a kohen hedjud.
Kosher kohen gadol.
Never proved it for a kohen.
Yeah, I don't need to. What was the proof? If two more should be tzibur by kohen hedjud, so kosher kohen hedjud should be mutar b'tzibur by kohen hedjud. Kosher kohen gadol. Says the Gemara, with Avitzah and Mudalef, you can ask so many questions. What should I do? The Torah gives you rules. You take what the rule has and what the rule implies, and that's what you do. You don't change it. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "You don't know what you want to do." You learn the way the pasuk says it with no kavachemes. That's what you said more. Then it will be first of all. Right. Because the word says, I didn't differentiate. The Torah did not differentiate. So I say whatever I know for all directions. And why? Because I don't know better, it's kavachim contradicting each other, I have no other choice. Taisus brings, that's what Taisus brings the list of all the places is brought down. And Taisus asks, why don't you say the same answer that we said over here? Why don't we say it in all these places? Taisus says maybe there's a reason, goes to a cheshbon, why it doesn't work in other places. But that's a oru of Tosis over here.
The last one, the only thing that changes is the Kain Hedya by Aninas by Yafa. Is that the only thing that changes?
That stays.
We say the Gemara was trying to prove a Kal Chomer that the Kain Hedya can become an Einin.
Right. Korbatzim is more no.
Now the Gemara says no. It's
Right.
right.
You basically stay with everything where intact.
Right.
That's what it is. There you go. Okay, so we'll stop over here. Be'ez Hashem, continue from here tomorrow night, same time. Be'ez Hashem.